listen up. All you ever ask for is an opportunity. You got it today. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
The Rockpile Report with Buffalo Bills season ticket holder Drew Geary.
Be aggressive. You have literally nothing to lose. You're a borderline football team. If I don't keep laughing about this stuff, my teeth are going to turn around and devour my brain.
The Bills make me wanna.
With the 9th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Ed Oliver, defensive tackle, Houston.
Probably explosiveness, athleticism, something that you can't find in every D tackle. I feel like my skill set is rare. It's a rare combination of size and speed. I feel like I can help the guys rushing outside. I can get pressure up the middle and help the guys outside get sacked.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I am your host, Bill season ticket holder Drew Geary. That's my producer, Chris Kruger, and that was Roger Goodell and Ed Oliver from NFL Network. Folks, thank God it's all over but the crying at this point. The 2019 NFL Draft is in the books. First of all, a huge shout out to Rock Sports Network for having me on their panel again for another draft show out at 34 Rush. Chris, that was a pretty good time, right?
Yeah, you face planted on the table when we took Singletary. So
everyone loves the fact that I come off the rails when things don't go the way I want them to. It's the personality, right? I just have that working for me. Folks, I'm not going to waste any time. We don't have any news other than draft talk. And here in studio with us tonight to help us parse through this, we have a guest.
Purveyor of Cleveland Browns hot takes.
The Cleveland Browns roster is better than the Buffalo Bills, and they will have more wins than the Bills in 2017. Browns are going to win the division and make the playoffs.
Host of Sports Talk Saturday on WGR Sports Radio, Nate Geary.
Cleveland, city of light, city of magic. Cleveland, city of light.
Mr. Geary, how are you doing this evening?
I bet a six-pack pretty recently. Whole six-pack. A whole sixer.
Six-pack of Seagrams.
That's right.
Baker Mayfield finishing second
and MVP
or
voting.
better
and
in
MVP
voting.
And they make the playoffs in a separate bet.
That's right. Division and playoffs. That's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Jesus. I mean, Nate, I got to ask you, what is with the love affair of the Cleveland Browns?
Lovable
Help me
loser.
understand it.
Lovable loser. They've done what the Bills could never actually accomplish, which was be at rock bottom for so long that you don't even really know which way is up. It's Chris, tell us about it. You've been in that place before.
I'm always there. I'm still there.
So there's something endearing about that to you.
Plus, you love Baker.
Yeah. I do. I like Baker a lot.
The second MVP voting?
Yeah, he's ready. That's going to be a good football team. They got a ton of weapons on the offense. They're talking about trading for Gerald McCoy and adding Gerald McCoy to Olivier Vernon and also Myles Garrett. Ed is a sick. Oh, and Sheldon Richardson as well. So that is, I mean, talk about that defensive line. It might be one of the best that I can remember in a pretty long while.
Here's what I'll tell you. I feel sorry. I feel sorry for your family. I feel sorry for your girlfriend. And most of all, I feel sorry for you when the diabetes that all of these Seagrams you're going to owe us kick in. It's going to be atrocious, and I'm going to...
My girlfriend's actually going to have to probably be there because she's going to have to drive me.
To the dentist?
To the dentist, both. Right from here. We're going to have to do it in the afternoon so we can get to the dentist.
Now, speaking of your girlfriend, as we are leading into this conversation about the 2019 NFL Draft, Nate has a humorous story about his non-football understanding girlfriend and her understanding of Nate as a person when it comes to the NFL Draft.
And is really starting to get a full understanding, a full spectrum of understanding. And the funny thing is, this would have been Wednesday evening of last week, so a week ago today. Mm-hmm. We're sitting down. She's doing some work on the laptop. I'm making my own mock draft, watching a mock draft. So I'm full on. I am
full on nerding out.
Full on nerding out. My computer's rocking back and forth from the boner that I've got. Just watching football and making this mock draft. And so I think it was maybe the Minnesota Vikings pick. The guy comes up in the 20. It was the ESPN one, so it was like the Live Nation. All of the team reporters for ESPN were doing it, and it's like, with the 19th pick in the 2019 ESPN mock draft, and she looks at me, she's like, I thought the draft was tomorrow. I was like, oh yeah, it's actually Thursday, Friday. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. She's like, well, it's Wednesday, and I'm like, well, this is a mock draft. And she kind of she looked at me, and for the context of it, this is the first time that we've been together for the draft. Mm-hmm. We started talking right around like this time last year.
So she didn't know how into
idea.
it you are.
She had no idea. But not only that, she had never really been around
a person
who even understands or watches with any sort of.
So when you explain to her that you're watching a draft and making your own draft that isn't a real draft, you almost see the wheels start to turn.
Well, the problem was, as I said to her, it's a mock draft. And then the look that she gave me was sort of like questioning the word mock. So I had to what I said was, yeah, it's a fake draft. And when I said that, that was really when the wheels fell off the bus. She was like, a fake draft. I'm like, yeah, do you want to see mine? Do you want to see mine that I'm making right now? I'm just actually typing out why I think the Bills should pick T.J. Hawkinson, Iowa, tight end. Did you want to know anything about Iowa's system? I could tell you a little bit about what made Nate Stanley the quarterback. Someone that really couldn't utilize two tight ends. She just,
Did she just glaze over?
So embarrassing. And just really, what it did is, she, the first time you guys met her when we were at when we were at O'Neill's. And when we were at O'Neill's when you pooped out all that awful hot sauce. Yeah, I can only imagine what your girlfriend had to. She probably had to prep the bathroom before you got home.
No, she went to sleep, and I ate popsicles and drank ginger ale.
It's smart. In the morning. Yeah, well, so what else could you do? But yeah, no, it was one of those things where, when you're the first time. That's right. I was telling you a story about the first time she met you. So I kind of prepped her. I'm like, most people. I was like, just the nerdiness of what we do. In the grand scheme of things, when I'm younger, when I used to call kids nerds, it's not because they were, us doing podcasts talking about football and are talking about our favorite teams, right? But nowadays, that's kind of what a nerd is. Luckily, none of us live in our mother's basement, because had that been the situation, had we been sharing a nice microwave meal in the basement of my parents' house while we were watching this mock draft, and she turned to me and said, "Mock draft?" And I told her that it was a fake draft, but I also live in my parents' basement. That would have been a very difficult conversation to have.
No, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds atrocious. Luckily for you, the real draft came and went.
I did.
And folks, that's the meat and potatoes of tonight's draft. Nate, thank you so much for coming and joining us. Guys, cheers. Let's kick this bastard off. 2019 NFL Draft Recap. I mean, first of all, as a whole, every year we go into the draft and there's some storylines that football fans everywhere, regardless of what your allegiance is, you're kind of forced to pay attention to. In 2016, it was the Laramie Tunsil incident.
That's right. Bongs and gas masks.
In 2018, it was this idea that this was going to be the quarterback class of a decade. That this was going to be one of the best. So even teams that didn't have any skin in the game, those teams were willing to pay attention to what was going on around them, even if it didn't directly impact their fan base. So this year, what was one of your favorite storylines of the draft?
That Daniel Jones is pretty much the 2019 version of Josh Allen. The most polarizing. Everyone says he stinks. He had no business being a first-round pick. Everything else like that. I mean, basically, you're talking about... Basically, you're hearing the same things you heard about Josh Allen, right? Isn't accurate... I mean, not the exact same things, but the amount of polarizing he was.
I heard he was Peyton Manning.
Oh, yeah, if you listen to Gil Brandt.
I also saw something like he's Eli Manning, except doesn't look like he just stepped in shit or something like that.
I'll tell you, there's just so many surprising things. I mean, first of all, for me, incredible story. The rise and fall of DK Metcalf.
Yeah. You know what the other thing was, too? This is what I want to bring up, is the anxiety that everyone had in Bills Mafia when the draft started, that the Bills were potentially moving up to number 3. And it was like a storyline. When the Jets picked Quinnen Williams at 3, there was still this sense of, well, is there a trade in place? And that the Bills just have to pick someone at 9 that they agreed to turn. Because that's what all these rumors are floating around. I'm like, first of all, I will admit, I think it might have been Mike Shope that stirred up that pot.
Of course
and
he did.
People a little excited about that.
Of course he did.
But I don't necessarily think, I wouldn't have been all that mad had they came away with Quinnen Williams in this draft. I'm not going to.
No, not at all.
It's fine. They ended up with Ed Oliver, who I think is the second best defensive player.
And that's it. But so when you look at the way it panned out, I mean, first you were hearing rumblings of the trade up, and you're sitting here thinking that if you've listened to any of the talking heads or you've talked to people who quote unquote know things, you had this sense that, the Bills have to take an offensive playmaker. There's no way they can go defense. Even though conventional wisdom says line play is more important than all these ancillary things. It's something we raged about for the last 2 weeks of our show right before the draft. So, I mean, Chris actually has some fantastic GIF images of me just agonizing over the 2 picks. Literally, I look like a mental patient.
Have you not seen him?
No.
I will.
That leading
I'll pull
up to our
Please.
pick, because I was just beside myself with this concept of, oh my God, they might screw this up. I mean,
yeah.
And the DK Metcalf thing feeds right into that. I mean, that's the storyline of the draft for me. Here's a guy that, I mean, how does a guy that every pundit out there pegged as at least at a minimum a first-round draft pick? Everyone calls him a first-round pick, says, the Bills had to take him at 9. If he didn't go at 9, he'd go at 17. Every team in football passed on him not once but twice.
Twice, yeah.
How does that happen?
You know, and I'm looking at DK Metcalf as like my fantasy rookie go-to player. Between him and Josh Jacobs, DK Metcalf went to a perfect situation. Doug Baldwin's going to retire. He's going to be their number 1 outside receiver.
I mean, good for him.
Yeah, he went into a great situation, but it's kind of crazy that it worked out the way it did, that he lasted as long as he did. I think the other thing is Hakeem Butler. Everyone was, and it's funny because a lot of the people that Twitter talked about, didn't get drafted. And one of the guys that I was higher on, and I think a lot of people were higher on, than Tyree Jackson, not getting drafted at all was a pretty incredible storyline, considering I wasn't the only person that I had him, within the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in this draft. It was, the fact that he was now a Buffalo Bill is a whole other story, but.
Well, no, and that's just it. You look at this, and I guess that's the thing, too. Hakeem Butler was another guy talked about, and maybe that's the bigger story here, is the lack of love for wide receivers in this draft.
Considering the depth, how deep the position was. But I think, and I talked about this while I was on, that I think how deep the position was, the fact that there was such a small difference between the 4th best wide receiver in the draft and the 16th best wide receiver in the draft, that their value kept getting pushed down because teams kept saying, well, we can just wait till next round and get a guy that's 2, the 7th best wide receiver instead of the 5th, and we're still just as high on that guy.
Oh, absolutely.
So everyone just kind of got pushed down the board.
Well, so I guess with the way the draft fell, every year there's always some conversation over overdrafted or underdrafted, where players went, what you can argue over what value is, but I think that there are some cases every season that we can point to for both. You just know flat out to a man, there's a player that got overdrafted, there's a player that fell, and no one understands why. Great value for that team. Who's a player in this draft that you think got overdrafted?
Daniel Jones is the easy answer, but I'm not here to give easy answers.
No, we're not here for softballs, folk.
I'm not here for
we're
easy answers.
We're professionals.
I think another easy answer, though, is clearly the 4th overall pick, the Oakland Raiders taking
Clelin Ferrell.
That was really just a head-scratching move. No wonder they sent their scouts home. And I saw someone tweeted this. It's like, no wonder they sent their scouts home. Had they didn't even need to send their scouts home. That was the thing. Because had somebody told anyone that they were taking Clelin Ferrell, number 4 overall, everyone would have laughed them off.
They would have assumed it was a lie.
Correct.
They would have assumed that this is clearly a smokescreen. When they showed him on ESPN, you could tell, like, Some of his family members weren't even in the room.
Right, they were like, wait. We went 4?
What?
Shit.
Oh, shit. We don't even have everyone in the goddamn fuck.
Right.
Oh, you
shit.
saw everyone losing their shit, and half his family wasn't even in the room. People were streaming in from every doorway. That's chaos right there. That's anarchy.
Yeah.
Well, Mayock himself, I think, said that he had Farrell and Bosa rated the same.
Okay, well, that's... Yo, listen, for the next podcast, let's do some research and find out what drugs Mike Mayock was doing for the draft, and we'll do them right before the podcast.
If I had to pick a guy for my candidate for most overdrafted player of the draft, it's the one that got the biggest laugh out of our entire table during the second round of Batavia Downs, and that's Jelani Tavi, linebacker out of Hawaii.
And that's for Cleveland?
Taken by the Detroit Lions at number
that's
14.
right. Wait. Drew Sample wasn't your overdrafted? He was like tight end number 15. He was the third tight end taken, fourth tight end taken.
Here's why. First of all, I don't know the last time a University of Hawaii defensive player was drafted in the top 3 rounds. Okay?
R.I.P. Cole Brennan, though.
Okay. And it was such a reach. You're in the top 2 rounds. If you made a pick, you have a ton of the guys, the analysts, the pundits on TV still have a ton of time to kill in between each pick because it's the second round. I think everybody still gets what, like 7 minutes or 8 minutes between picks. The ESPN analysts glossed right over it. They didn't even try to discuss it. They were just like, oh, they took that linebacker? What were we just talking about before the Lions fucked that one up? I mean, think about it.
The Lions did have not a great draft.
Not a great draft? Holy fuck. Okay, most pundits had a 3rd to 5th round grade on him because apparently he struggles in coverage and isn't the best athlete. And they just drafted a middle linebacker in the 1st round 2 years ago. And so they take another one at the second. Oh, good. Good for you, Detroit Lions. Somewhere Matt Stafford threw a beer at his TV. That's it. I imagine what it's... I mean, think about that. Between that and the pick of T.J. Hawkinson at number 9.
I liked Hawkinson.
At number 8.
Yeah.
I liked Hawkinson there, too. That's the face in that gif. That's when I was watching the Lions on the clock going, please.
Hand on the forehead.
Please take it. And when they took Hawkinson,
I
I think I celebrated harder for that pick than I did for our own first-round draft pick. Because I knew he couldn't wear a Bills uniform. And I'd like to
think he wouldn't fit in it?
I mean, that's literally the 3rd tight end that they've drafted in the 1st round when Matt Stafford's been there. This is do you think he's sick of getting his ass kicked every single Sunday and every single season? Draft a tackle, you sons of bitches. Get me a center. Nope. We're going to go out and we're going to get you another tight end, Matt Stafford. That's going to get us to the Super Bowl. Woo! And then if I had to take a candidate for underdrafted, you're talking about exquisite value. There's a guy here, and
exquisite.
And as much as I hate John Elway, as much as I hate what
he's Drew locking us right now.
Well, this is what I hate about what he's done out there is his lack of ability at finding a quarterback.
Yeah.
And when he took Noah Fant
Joe Flacco
in the 1st round,
in his prime.
I laughed quote unquote in his prime. He's an ass. I don't care what he says. He's not in his prime.
Republican.
But what I'll say is that especially when your quarterback is Joe Flacco, you played NFL draft chicken by taking a tight end in the 1st round. That's with all the talent that's left on the board. That's
aging wide receivers.
That's a dice roll.
They have a good offensive line, and they got an offensive lineman.
They did. They get a sec. Then they get a
who is their offensive lineman?
Offensive lineman.
I don't even know. I don't care because here's what I know: they took Drew Lock when he fell to them in the 2nd round. Now, again, another team could have said, "Hey, the Dolphins could have said, hey, you know what? We want that pick, and we're going to trade up to get him." Another team, the Cincinnati Bengals, anybody could have done it. No one did, and Drew Lock fell to them. Now,
Drew Lock was my QB2.
Now, exactly. And now here's what I'll say. If the roles had been... Because there's people who are just laughing.
Dalton Risner.
Okay, so now here's the thing. Everyone wants to badger John Elway for that pick of Noah Fant in the 1st round.
That's right.
But you got arguably the 2nd best quarterback in the entire draft.
The second best quarterback. Better than Dwayne Haskins. Not a Dwayne Haskins fan over here.
Now, ultimately, if the picks were reversed, and Drew Lock was the 1st round pick and Noah Fant was the 2nd round pick, would we hear any of this? There would be no complaints.
No.
No. In fact, people would be calling him a genius.
Yeah.
Ergo, I think that makes Drew Lock probably the most underrated pick of the draft because it saved John Elway's draft. True or false? Someone get in the ring with me on this.
I like that pick. I like the Dalton Risner pick.
Well, all I can think about, Drew, is the playoff game. Baltimore, Joe Flacco sitting between Robert Griffin and Lamar Jackson, and you took the photo of it during the playoff game. They're like leaning behind Joe Flacco, trying to talk to each other about the game plan, and Joe Flacco's just sitting there offering no advice.
Joe Flacco leaned forward so that RG3 and Lamar Jackson could have a conversation
behind him.
Yes.
Behind him.
Good for him.
He's like, you know what? I'm not willing to move, but I'm also not willing to help you.
Yeah.
So I'll get out of your way.
Yeah, I don't think Flacco is going to help out
sure
Drew
this
Lock
is gonna go
at
well.
all. That's what my brain went to when they took Lock. I didn't think Flacco would do.
The Broncos are a weird team, right? But their composition, the defense. Von Miller's getting older. He's still probably in his prime. Flacco, honestly, Flacco will probably be revived with the high altitude up there. His arm will have a little bit more liveliness to it. I'm dead serious. I think he'll have a better season, depending on Emmanuel Sanders, how he comes back from the Achilles injury that he had. Deshaun Hamilton was a nice pickup last year out of Penn State. He's a player that came around. Cortland Sutton was a nice little player that came around for them last year. So they've got some weapons at the wide receiver. They've got who I really like Noah Fant a lot. I ranked them both very equally. Him and Hawkinson, really the difference was what Noah Fant lacked in blocking that TJ Hawkinson had. I thought Noah Fant made up for in his ability and his athletic ability, his catching prowess, things like that. But in terms of like most underdrafted player, I'd say Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen drops to number 7, and Jacksonville's foaming at the mouth that Josh Allen fell to them.
Yeah.
Most people, and I thought, I mean, Cleveland Farrell helps. Right, just laugh it out. Cleveland Farrell helped.
I can't get enough of this. Cleveland Farrell going number 4 to the Raiders in this super secret draft.
That's right,
plan
the super secret draft plan where they had the Men in Black thing where they had to blind all of their scouts. No, but like I think of it this way, right? Like that draft pick probably had 5 GMs all say, "Holy shit, we're going to get the guy that we want." Because think about it this way. I guarantee Jacksonville doesn't get Josh Allen. They're probably talking about trading out of that pick. They're not taking Juwan Taylor like everyone thought that they were going to take. Juwan Taylor falls to the second round, and they end up getting him anyways, which is such a great move. Jacksonville had the 2 teams, other than Josh Allen being, I think, the most underdrafted guy, the 2 teams that I thought really won the draft, especially early. I thought Jacksonville won the draft early, and I also thought Washington had just a fucking great draft. Like Washington, for Dan Snyder being the guy at the helm, calling that draft. Like, I'm not a Dwayne Haskins fan, but I'm a Dwayne Haskins fan at 15.
Well,
not trading up for him.
And
I'm a huge Terry McLaurin fan. I love that they team him up with his former teammate at Ohio State. And then they get Montez Sweat. They trade back into the first round. They get Montez Sweat.
He was a player I really liked.
Right, and they've got Ryan Kerrigan, who is the most underrated pass rusher in football. Does not get enough.
I would give you that. He's very
underrated.
So
a 10-sack-a-year guy.
So you can declare them winners of this draft.
Yeah, they had a really good draft.
Every draft has winners and losers. Now, you just pointed out 2 teams that won, and it's hard to argue with that logic because you're talking, again, a team that got 2 dynamic players at positions of need, offense and defense. Now, I take a look at the losers because I'm petty, and I like to see people suffer. The 2 biggest losers from this draft, I mean, I think we've already beat them up a little bit here in Mike Mayock, but GMs Mike Mayock and Steve Keim. I mean, Steve Keim, this fucking guy. Last season, he traded away a 3rd and a 5th rounder to move up 5 spots to draft Josh Rosen. Fast forward almost a year and a day, he's shipping that player away for an extremely late 2nd round pick.
Yeah.
Because he drafted Kyler Murray at number 1 overall. So if I can play owner for a minute, I own an NFL team, and you're telling me that a GM, my GM, that gave up a lot of capital to acquire a player and just spent millions of dollars hiring a head coach. And a year later, they're both cashing paychecks somewhere else in less than a calendar year, I'm somehow supposed to trust that he's the guy that I should somehow entrust him. I mean, also, let's not forget the $2 million offensive line and the rest of that vomit-inducing roster.
That's a bad offensive line.
He's the man that I'm trusting to construct this, and I'm trusting him to pick the right head coach and quarterback again.
I want to go on record. I do like Cliff Kingsbury.
Fuck Cliff Kingsbury. Fuck Kyler Murray. He should have gone and played baseball. I don't think this is going to end well for anybody. And another thing that's not going to end well for anybody, including Raiders fans, is this Mike Mayock experiment.
Chris?
I'm sorry, if you're an analyst, who's this is your
Seagram's.
Seagram's
bet. Sounds like a Seagram's. I'm hearing a 2-year Seagram's bet right here, where I would like you to put a bet on where the Arizona Cardinals are at the end of the 2020 season.
Not in the playoffs.
Because I'll take the opposite.
Okay, there it is. It just happened. See, folks.
Playoffs?
Playoffs.
I don't know if I'm really.
Come on. You opened this door.
How about this? Cliff Kingsbury, coach or not coach by the end of the 2020 season? That's 2 years.
He's still the coach, but he's a coach under fire. If he's on the hot seat, if there's talk about him being on the hot seat,
we're gonna need some harder parameters.
Yeah, I think so.
We're gonna hash the rest of this
out.
We will.
The details will happen. Yeah.
So when you look at Oakland fans, how are they supposed to feel? I mean, I because again, I'm petty. I sift through the wreckage of other fan bases because it makes me feel better about my own life. You're talking about a franchise that traded away a generational player. I mean, I'm not sure if I watched what was going on with the Raiders. And I'm not sure if we just watched Mike Mayock's first draft or a comedy about the NFL starring Leslie Nielsen. Like, is that what just happened,
Sean
Chris?
Connery.
Is it what just happened? Leslie Nielsen's back there naked gunning this thing. They take Clelin Ferrell, widely regarded as the 5th best defensive end prospect. They take running back Josh Jacobs, who is called the best running back in the class, which is a position that's been kind of devalued over the years. If you're not Todd Gurley, are you a first-round pick? That's where we've fallen. And then strong safety Jonathan Abram, who is a strong safety, but he has a notable lack of ball skills.
That's right. He's a box defender.
So in a class that's dominated by offensive and defensive line players, that's your haul. That's what you came away with. A running back with a small body of work.
They traded back a bunch, too.
And there was Montez Sweat and Marquise Brown were still on the board. What the Farrell pick, that right there, he should have been marched out of the fucking war room, but there was nobody there to do it because he sent everyone home.
That's right. That's probably why.
Oh my God,
bad. It was a bad draft for Oakland.
And here's the worst part. Here's how you could if you were a competent liar. Here's how you could defend the Clelin Ferrell pick if you're Mike Mayock. You go to the podium on Monday morning. You hold your press conference and you say
resign.
to your fan base, hey, I know that people said he's subpar. I know people said he lacked the athletic chops to really be considered one of the top 10 prospects in this draft. I've done my homework. I've scouted him, and I see something in him that none of these other people see. You have to trust my vision.
Sounds like Dave Gettleman.
Exactly. But at least then you can laugh your way through a press conference and instill some semblance of, I don't know what you want to call it, but some semblance of respect, some semblance of confidence in the fact that you know what you're doing. Instead, what comes out Monday is that the Raiders were fairly certain they were going to get offers to trade back, which is why Clelin Ferrell was the top player on their board. And when their phone didn't ring, they stuck to the board. Wow. They stuck to a board that was built around this faulty premise that somebody wanted their pick. What the fuck are we doing here? I feel like Chris could run that draft.
Well,
probably. Do they allow Mohawks in Oakland?
They don't.
And I think the biggest losers of the weekend are all those butthurt bachelorettes crying about their poor run. Listen, honey.
Yes.
It's the NFL draft. Okay?
And Steve Smith was a big loser of the weekend, too. He sounded like such a dickhead.
Well, when doesn't he? Come on.
Sounded like a fucking asshole.
Well, don't we all, though? Now, here's the thing. By all accounts, the Buffalo Bills, and I'm not used to this, and maybe you working in the media the way that you do, maybe you have a different take on this, but I'm genuinely uncomfortable as I go through all of these draft, they rank your draft, which ultimately is
a lot of people like the Bills.
It's meaningless immediately afterwards, but I'm used to people panning what we do. And I'm used to panning what we do. People seem to really like what we're doing over here all of a sudden, and I don't know how to feel about it. Nate, do you concur with this national perspective that overall we had a solid draft?
I'd agree.
Okay.
I like the A-, B+ range for what the Bills did in the draft. I really like them solidifying, getting 2 starters in the first 2 rounds. I really, really, really like the Dawson Knox pick. I love that they traded up to go get him.
Oh, you're going to have to explain this one to me then. I'm going to stop you right there because we're going to launch right into this. First of all, draft recap, Chris, and it all starts at pick number 9. As I said it should.
Okay.
Defensive tackle Ed Oliver.
Yes! Give me 10, Norton! Everyone can eat shit! A big bag of shit! I'm the greatest man in the world! Woo!
Folks, after that pick was made, I wanted to walk around with my arms out, like Maximus Aurelius in Gladiator, demanding to know if everyone in my neighborhood was entertained. But if I had done that, they would have just they would have called the cops. Let's be honest.
Yep.
Shirtless Drew Gear out in the street. Nobody needs that in their lives. But they would have no way of knowing. They don't listen to my podcast. They would have no way of knowing that I've spent months telling everyone who would listen that defensive tackle had to be the pick. Had to be. Because it's the one place that they didn't spend any free agent money. Mm-hmm. They didn't try to address it.
They spent a lot of money on Tyler Tulele last year.
Well, that's debatable. I digress. We have Ed Oliver. He's here now. And outside, that's it. I knew he had to be the pick, and he's here now. Makes me feel good about this because it makes me feel like maybe, just maybe, I know what the hell I'm talking about. Just a little bit. You know?
Well, you've yet to be right on any draft that we've ever had while doing this.
So this is a first, folks.
Yeah, this is a first.
So the first time I noticed Ed Oliver was 2 years ago, and it was in that Louisville game. Primetime TV, number 5 Louisville against Houston. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a slaughter. And they're talking about Lamar Jackson being, Heisman Trophy.
Right.
Okay, let's watch this game. And the only person that I actually noticed out there was Ed Oliver.
Yeah.
Because he mauled the entire offense. I mean, he finished that game 2 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss. He had a forced fumble. He was batting down passes. He was taking on multiple blockers because he was deployed as a nose tackle.
Did you hear his coach on GR with Howard and Jeremy?
No, but I heard him and his coach were not. This was
his defensive line coach, not his head coach.
Okay, no, I did not.
His defensive line coach, when Howard asked him if he thought that Ed Oliver was playing out of position in college, because that was the narrative, is that whatever team gets him and puts him in a 3 technique, he'll thrive in it. And that's really what's best suited for him. And what the college coach said is the word nose tackle was thrown around a lot about Ed Oliver, that maybe people didn't really understand what the nose tackle in that defense did. For the most part, when you think of nose tackle, what you think of is 3-4. You think of a guy that is responsible for 2 gaps. The reason being is he's head up over the center. That's a nose guard.
Yeah.
He's head up over the center. He's responsible for both A gaps. So that in itself is really taking away what Ed Oliver does great, right? Because he's a penetrator. If he's a one gap player, and that's what a 3 technique is.
And his lateral agility
is
incredible for a guy his size.
But this position on their particular defense, the nose tackle wasn't expected to play a 2 gap position. He was a 1 gap player.
Okay.
But basically, what he said is the best player on the entire defense was their nose tackle, and it was no question who the best player on the defense was, and that was Ed Oliver, because he was creating the most disruption. And sure, is he going to play the 1 technique or the nose tackle in the NFL? No. He's going to play in a 3 technique in a defense that really, really, really could. Listen, Sean McDermott likes one thing. It's in his defense, Kawan Short, some of the guys that they've drafted in Carolina. It's having the ability to penetrate through that 3 technique and getting through the C gap, and having a player like Ed Oliver who can really kind of cover from the A to the C and be an electric pass rusher. I think in the middle is something. Listen, Kyle Williams, I thought last year was a top 10 defensive pass rusher from inside. He was really that effective when he was playing. Still, Ed Oliver could potentially be the best interior pass rusher in football outside of a guy named Aaron Donald next year or in 2 years.
Well, and that's what's incredible. So
Aaron Donald's in a league of his own, but he could have that dominance.
Your premise isn't lost on me. I mean, when you look at all these different draft analysts and you kind of summarize what it is they're saying, because that's what I like to boil this down to after the draft. Try to get different people's takes. Todd McShay from ESPN loved the pick. Said that he has the chance to be one of 2 or 3 of the best players in this draft. I liked John Ledyard's kind of from the Draft Network. I like the way he summarized it. He said, at the end of the day, Oliver is far too explosive with freakish strength and movement skills to not take a chance on. But we need to acknowledge that he is definitely a risk that might not be worth taking at the top 10 of the 2019 draft. Now, I can understand why. I mean, when you look at, because it comes down to what you're asking him to do. In the Bills scheme, this is where he fits. First of all, freak lateral agility for a guy who's almost 290 pounds. And he's going to get a little heavier. That's just what happens in an NFL strength training program. You gain a little bit of weight. So but that ability to become slippery, that ability to just get off the ball quick and attack guys bigger than him with just the way he gap hops and the way that he can kind of slide around in front of linemen, move them with power, or sometimes just beat them to their own spot. That's going to help.
That guy plays with energy.
Of being paired up with guys like Star Latulippe
Yeah.
and guys like Harrison Phillips, who, they don't in and of themselves bring you any kind of pass rush, but they can eat space. And
I'll tell you this, too. If Ed Oliver starts commanding double teams, Star Latulippe becomes a far more important player.
It makes the guys around
especially
him more
in the run
by
game.
Default.
In the run game, if Star Latulippe has one defender, Star Latulippe could have a Pro Bowl type season as a interior run defender. His job, the reason that the Bills pay him, I thought they overpaid him, is really to take on double teams and just be a guy that allows the other 6 players around him to roam freely or to roam on single team or man up scenarios. Now, if you free up a Star Latulippe in the run game, that is, I mean, you're talking about what an interior defensive line, you start bouncing plays to the outside and you start letting hopefully the Ziggy Ansahs of the world, who is an elite edge rush defender. I would love that to go with an elite edge pass rusher in Jerry Hughes. Those bookend corners with Trent Murphy coming in on third down situations, loving that rotation gets Ziggy Ansah.
I just look at what it does for our depth chart. You're talking about we have a true 4-man rotation with an impact player finally.
That's right.
Last season,
a lot of B+ players, B to B- players.
Yes.
No one was a C in the middle.
Nobody. But at the same time, what you're talking about is because even Harrison Phillips, he had a rough end to the season because he hit that rookie wall everyone talks about. He'll hopefully find a way to get over that in his second season. But there again, you had a rotation of mediocre players in your defensive tackle.
Like Jordan, I think we all like Jordan Phillips, right? I mean, everybody likes Jordan Phillips. He's not terrible. Yeah.
He's just got to find consistency.
But I think he can do that. He can do that in 20 snaps.
And that's why you signed him to a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
You're going to get him more snaps. This is what I see when it comes to this draft pick's impact on the depth chart. You now have a 4-man rotation with a true impact player wedged in there. This is what I would say. I would argue, and I've already been told that I'm stupid for thinking this, if you have an Ed Oliver, who the book on him is that he's going to need to learn because he's smaller. He's going to be smaller than a lot of his competition at the NFL level. He's going to have to learn how to consistently transfer leverage and energy into winning against the run, against the pass. It would do him favors to start him out as your defensive tackle 3. Be the guy that gets rotated in on advantageous downs so that you're not just sending him out there every single first down so that some center and guard combo can maul him to death. You don't, because you're not learning at that point. You're just getting beat. You're just getting beat up by guys who are much more physically mature than you, who understand the nuances of the NFL game more than you. I feel like if you really want to see this kid excel this season, you start him off not on a pitch count, but as your third D tackle. You let Jordan Phillips go out there and earn that contract. I mean, he's the 21st highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. Let him go out there and be your gap penetrator on first downs, on second downs. And when you come up with a second and long, or when you come across a passing down on third down, you throw Ed Oliver out there.
Has he picked his number yet?
I don't know. Chris, do you know?
I have no idea. He wanted 91, I know that, but somebody's already got it. So he's going to have to fork over.
Somebody irrelevant has it.
Yeah, I was going to say somebody who's not making this roster.
They should. I'd say he'd look really good in 90. He needs to figure out a way to get Shaq Lawson off 90. It's like, listen, bro, they didn't pick up your option. You don't have much time here.
All I know is that it's going to be really interesting to see the impact that this guy brings.
He's the best defensive.
Can we toast to this? The
Yes.
best, I'd say, defensive player, second or third best player in this entire draft, and he falls to us at 9. I think that's the other caveat to this pick, and the other reason to just have a hard-on for it, is that we didn't have to go anywhere.
That's right.
We didn't have to give anything up. He fell to us. Now, the second pick in the draft, we did have to give something up, and I actually have a bone to pick with whoever the fuck out there. There's 4 of you, and you know who you are. You're listening to this right now. In the middle of the draft, we moved up to pick 38 to draft offensive tackle Cody Ford in the second round. We gave up a 5th-round pick, which is essentially A.J. McCarron.
Yeah.
That is the A.J. McCarron pick, and people were complaining about it.
Well, anytime they trade up now, people complain. But they trade up a lot. That's what they do.
You
They
gave
had 10
away
picks.
if I had come to you as a Bills fan and said, hey, I'm going to land you a potential right tackle of the future, and all it's going to cost you right now, this is last offseason. If I came to you and said, you can have this, and all it's going to cost you right now, give me
your
AJ
starting right tackle.
Give me A.J. McCarron. Just give me him now. I would have driven over there and packed his shit myself.
We did say 5th-round pick.
5th.
All right. Matt Milano was taken in the 5th.
He was.
Yeah, he's the outlier. That's it. Every other 5th
Taron
round
Johnson
pick
was picked in the 4th.
That throwaway pick, Matt Milano.
Listen, though, here's what I
Throwaway
think.
pick, Matt
Here's what I
Milano.
think about throwing away a pick like the 5th-round pick. They threw it away. It was, we need to move up 2 spots because had they not, the Baltimore Ravens would have. And if the Baltimore Ravens had moved up and taken Cody Ford, they don't get who I think is, and Chris Trapasso says the same thing, that he was the number 2 guard in this draft. I think he plays out better in the future as a guard. I think he'll start eventually the game 1. I think he'll be at guard. I think
really.
Here's the thing. I really like Ty Nasiki, the guy that the 34-year-old tackle that they got from Washington. Doesn't have a lot of mileage on him for being a 33 or 34-year-old. He's going to be hard to keep off the field at the right tackle position. Not only that, no one's made a compelling enough argument for me to move Deion Dawkins to guard, especially because he can't play on the right side, and Quinn Spain's your left guard. So he's your left tackle. Unless you feel that Cody Ford's playing left tackle, which you shouldn't feel that because you haven't seen him on the left side. So nothing would suggest that he could play on the left side. Deion Dawkins can't play on the right side, and I can find some film to show you that he can't play on the right side.
Here's what I'm going to say to you, sir. First of all, you want to start this off with scheme fit? Let's start with scheme fit. His athleticism, evident.
Yeah.
The kid can get, at playing tackle, can get out in space and mow people down. Okay, he's athletic. He moves well. He gets to the second level consistently when he's blocking. I understand that he could be the second or third best guard, but if developed properly, he could still be a high-end right tackle. When I look at this roster right now, okay, what I see is a group of players. This is why he's incredibly, I have him earmarked as my most interesting draft pick in terms of training camp. Because of all the offensive line signings that you saw from Buffalo in the offseason, the only one who has started games at the right tackle position and has proven that he understands the technique. Because left tackle doesn't always translate to right tackle.
It doesn't. Just
the
ask
same
Deion
way
Dawkins.
Cyrus Kouandjio sucked at right tackle, but when he was put at left tackle with the Houston Texans, he was at least serviceable enough to stick around. Okay? Adrian Waddell, starter of 5 games in his entire career, is the only offensive lineman on our roster right now who has NFL starts at right tackle. If you're giving me a guy with Cody Ford's upside and athleticism, I am willing to take that bet and let that play out versus just pigeonholing him as a guard simply because he could be good at it.
I don't think. Well, it's not that he could be good at it. He played his sophomore and junior year at right guard in Oklahoma.
He can do it at a high level.
He has proved that he can do it at a high level. The thing that I think, and Chris Trapasso said the same thing. I was listening on the way here, so this is why these quotes are fresh in my mind. That Chris Trapasso, this is what Chris Trapasso said about Cody Ford, is that he struggles with the smaller shiftier pass rushers, the speed rushers.
Speed.
And in the NFL now, most teams are putting their best pass rusher over the right tackle.
Yes.
It's just where people are putting their best pass rusher. Von Miller's the outlier because he's the best pass rusher in football. But I look at it like this, that Cody Ford, all of the reasons you mentioned that you think that the reasons that he should be a tackle, I think would make him an elite, I think an all-pro type guard, because his athletic ability on pulls, on interior runs, something we know that Brian Dable wants to run traps and run things inside.
That's fair.
His ability to pull and move and maul really plays well to that right guard position. Not only that, but what his main weakness is here, which is potentially defending smaller, fast pass rushers, is almost completely taken off the table when you move him on the inside. And I agree, Ty Nsekhe doesn't have a ton of starts at the right tackle position over the course of his career. Most of the time he played on the left side, but that's a player that can and has played at the right side and has played it at a high level when he's been asked to do it. Adrian Waddell, another player that I think could be a potential for the starting right tackle position if they decide they want to go with a guy like Cody Ford. Let's play this situation out. Cody Ford's your starting right tackle. That means Quentin Spain's got to be your starting right guard because you're moving Deion Dawkins down to left guard and putting Ty Nsekhe as your left tackle. I can be fine with that situation, but I think for what they could do and be their best five, maybe that's it. Maybe that's their best five, is having Deion Dawkins and having Quentin Spain not on the same time. But the only thing I worry about with Dawkins at guard is, does he have the strength and power to be going up against one techniques and be going up against that? I don't know. I don't know.
We haven't seen it.
We haven't seen
right.
it.
And you know
and
what?
he
That's
can't play the right
point.
side. He cannot play the right side.
This is what I love about Cody Ford, though. When you look at who he is and what he represents, and you watch some tape. Now, folks who listen to the podcast know I watch line play. That's where my eyes are focused during most football games. I'm watching what's going on in the trenches. I'm watching what's going on in the pocket. The wide receiver, the routes, what the coverage is doing, I'll admit, I'm generally not paying attention to that in real time. That's just not where my eyes go. What I'll say is this. Short of Richie Incognito, prior to him and after his departure, I can't tell you the last time we had a legitimately nasty offensive line. Someone who's...
Richie's pretty nasty.
Somebody whose mentality is just, I'm going to go out here...
And scream MAGA in people's face. That's scary.
Someone who's going to... We're going to snap the football, and at the snap, I'm going to punch you and everyone wearing your jersey in the mouth.
Trey Teague used to do that.
And maybe even after the whistle's over, I'm going to play through it just to remind you that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. You're going to have to deal... It's going to be a long fucking day. That's what I watched after the draft, after that second round. I went home. I got home from Batavia Downs at about 2:30 in the morning. And I sat down, and I was still just wired, and I couldn't sleep. And I pull up my tablet, and I start watching Cody Ford highlights.
Cody porn?
Cody highlights. And what I see is a guy who just doesn't give a... Dude, reckless abandon. He doesn't give a fuck about your feelings. He doesn't care about your...
shit.
He doesn't care if your kids are watching. He's going to go out there and he's going to try to embarrass you. That's how he plays the game of football. You watched him punk kids. He'd block you to the ground, and then as you're trying to get up, block
spit
you
in your
again.
face.
Just to let you know...
Call your mother a bitch.
I pancaked you. And I did it a second time to remind you that this is going to happen every single time you get up to the line.
So before I sell you on the third round picks, what I want to do a quick exercise. I need both of you and each of you and also me to
I'm going to need 2 more beers. Chris,
to name the most random Bills offensive lineman that pops into your head.
Chris Williams, guard.
Wow, Chris Williams.
Yes.
That's a good one, brother. That's a good one.
Brad Butler, right tackle.
Brad Butler. That's another pretty good one. I kind of said mine. I thought the Trey Teague one was really good. And I kind of wanted to touch back on it because nobody really was like, oh, good call on the Trey Teague one. So I'll say Derek Dockery is another. So that's a good exercise. Just making sure.
Here's
Just
what I love.
Keeping you guys sharp.
I love this pick, and I love what it does for our team long term. And again, Chris, we finished our offseason series with offensive and defensive line. Why? Because they were 2 needs, and they were 2 of the deepest positions in this draft class. It turns out we've addressed both of them, and that's where you spend your money, right? Yeah. Offensive line, defensive line. That's where the dollars...
You got to build for the inside
That's
out.
where the big money gets
Even
spent.
I know that.
Now we have 2 high upside cost controlled projects. And now we've reached the part of the draft recap where I'm going to need Nate Geary to work his magic and talk me off a fucking ledge. Here we are. Pick number 74, third round, running back Devin Singletary.
You face planted the table at Batavia Downs.
In the middle of our draft show, folks, I feel like I ask for this sometimes. We're going around the table, we're having conversation about what's going on, and the Bills pick is coming up. What are we going to do? And I had literally just gotten done explaining that I viewed this draft as one great third-round pick. One great third-round pick away.
They had 2.
From being a home run.
2.
I was going to stand up like a walk-off home run and just walk out of Batavia Downs with my hands in the air. Because that's how much of a home run this draft was going to be. And then, like 3 minutes later, Bills are on the clock.
Yeah, we have to set
the 74th pick.
Yeah, you have to set this
the
up.
2019 NFL draft.
You have to set this up because you were in at Batavia Downs. They switched the draft from ESPN.
Yes,
to ESPN
right before that pick.
Yes. So at
I remember
Batavia
that.
Downs,
I was on the radio.
Basketball comes on.
Well, no, because here's what happened. What happens is the 30th pick comes up. You're watching it like 2 minutes. All of a sudden, Bills trade. You see the Bills logo go into the spot. You're like, I was like, yeah, we're gonna go to break. When we come back, the Bills are. The Bills are up right now. The Bills are up. We're gonna stay here. We're gonna stay with you. And all of a sudden, it goes to another station. I'm like, somebody get it up. We gotta get this screwed up right now.
Your balls immediately jump
right.
in your throat. You're like, oh no.
They changed it right to basketball. And so you had to pay attention to your computer and Twitter to get the pick. So this is happening,
and we're sitting here, and everybody's in silence. Just everybody in the crowd is on their phones, just frantically trying to figure out who the draft pick is. And I see a running back who's 5'8" and 203 pounds.
5'7" and a half.
But ran a 4.6 40.
4.66.
I grabbed my tablet with both hands and just flipped it.
And then
you did the Aaron Rodgers thing, or you just like tossed it?
And then just put my head.
Flipping a table,
just flipped it and put my face down on the table.
So you didn't like the pick?
Like Ace Ventura on the bench. Ace Ventura on the bench. You know when
right.
Yeah. Boom. Face plants. Yeah. Right down on the table.
Oh, there were 6'4" wide receivers. There was talent at the wide receiver, the tight end position, and instead we draft a small, slow running back. Immediately after the draft, when the draft show ended, Kyle Trimble from BangedUpBills.com, he comes walking up to me with the last third of his pitcher of IPA and just goes,
"That's a good friend right there."
He goes, "Man,
you need this more than me.
You look like you need this more than me." And because I'm a fucking gentleman, I drank it out of the pitcher because I didn't want to dirty another glass.
That's right.
But to say I was confused and frustrated is a wild understatement. I mean, luckily for us, Matt Waldman from the rookie scouting portfolio
gave you a brief.
Chris emails this guy and says,
him.
Can you shoot us a brief?
Yeah,
what would you say, Chris?
I said, this is what I wrote in the email to Matt Waldman. Do you have any articles written on Devin Singletary? If not, do you have a short synopsis?
He's like, yes, Chris, let me send you
I'll
my...
get it over to Drew so we can do it for our next show, and we'll credit you. And I'm not.
Let me send you my dissertation on Devin Singletary.
Nate, how long does this look?
It's 9 paragraphs.
It's pretty long.
It's 9 paragraphs.
It's pretty long.
And it goes to show you why we love Matt Waldman so much. So thorough on anybody.
So, folks, I've broken it down into 3 bullet points from 9 paragraphs. Matt, you're the fucking best if you're listening to this, but Jesus, man. So, this was my takeaways from reading all of this. He's slow, not nearly as quick as his moves make him appear.
Combine slow.
And he's unlikely to get any sturdier with a frame that is likely maxed out. The difference between him being a number 8 running back and the number 15 on my board comes down to one grade that could have gone either way: acceleration. And he's a contributor level player rather than a player with borderline starter upside. Nate, explain to me why I shouldn't be apoplectic about this. Silence is deafening.
He plays a whole hell of a lot faster than his combine numbers suggest. He's a fast. There's always a couple guys every year that are on both sides of the spectrum that test better than they show on film, that just they run a blazing fast score and you're like, When you put him on film, do you see him utilizing the 4.4 speed? There's always players. And the same can be said about the other side, where a lot of people are talking about Alvin Kamara's 4.57, and we're saying, well, this isn't a player that has the top-end speed to be a first-round pick, blah, 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 and look what Alvin Kamara's done. Now, I understand that he's in the 4th percentile of height. 5'7 3/4 or whatever he is small. 760 some odd carries is a lot of carries to have in college. 32 touchdowns in one season is a lot to have in college. The 700 and whatever carries that he had in college, he was probably hit on 120 of them. The guy doesn't know how to get hit. He figures out ways to The thing that I like about him is he gets lost behind the offensive line. So when guys are trying to track him down, he plays low too. For 5'7", his pad level is low, and he finds ways, and his shiftiness inside, like Brandon Beane said, that he can make a guy miss in a phone booth. There are few guys like LaShawn McCoy. He doesn't have the lateral quickness that LaShawn McCoy has. But when you are one-on-one with him, you won't likely tackle him. And I can tell you from the standpoint of, as a defender, when you're going up against a smaller guy who is fast and can move quickly and plant and go another direction, it scares the shit out of you. Because all you want to do is do what you do best, which is deplete the little shit, right? You just want to deplete him. And he just finds ways to squeak out of big hits and gain 5 more yards. He's not Maurice Jones-Drew. He's not Ray Rice. He's not one of these guys that we've seen before, because Ray Rice ran a 4.4 something.
That's what I was going to say. I've seen, he's MJD. No, because MJD was a load who ran a 4.8.
But listen,
a 4.48.
Either way you spin it, he would have ended up being a round 3 pick. Somebody was going to pick him in the 3rd round. David Montgomery goes the pick before, and the Chicago Bears traded in front of the Bills to do that. Now, were the Bills going to take David Montgomery over Devin Singletary? I don't know. But I know for a fact that Devin Singletary was a pretty highly regarded top 4 running back in this draft. And whether or not he ends up being anything, whatever, because here's the thing. Their running back room outside of TJ Yeldon are all either journeyman players, Sonoris Perry, that everyone's like, but what about Sonoris Perry? And I'm like, yeah, well,
the man of 8 carries in his career.
Just shut up.
Well,
Sonoris Perry guy.
Here's the thing, though, and here's why I give that some credence, because when you look at it, and I'll buy this. Okay. Here's the one thing that you just tried to sell me that I'll buy. When you look at it, he's short. We have one of the taller offensive lines with Mitch Morse.
Cody Ford, 6'5".
Spain.
Yeah.
Spain's
big
huge.
Guard. He's a big
Spain's
guard.
Huge. He's a mammoth
Deion Dawkins,
human being.
6'5".
Deion Dawkins.
They're 6'5" across the board.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, my question would be
it's a foot taller.
My question is, if you have Spain left guard, and does Dave Bold have a play in the playbook? Spain pulls, Singletary runs through his legs.
10 inches
into the second level.
This isn't the Three Stooges playing football, Chris. My thing is, I can see a tall offensive line the way we're constructed with a tiny running back who's shifty. It already makes him hard enough to see. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to buy anything you just tried to sell me, that might be part of it. But then,
do you know the last thing? Let me just tell you about the Singletary, and this is another Chris Trapasso thing that he said that I was like, yes, that's totally true. Is when you see the highlight film of running backs, you're like, wow, that guy's good. He's running people over. He's dropping his pad level and running a linebacker over. He's dropping his pad level, running that safety over. He's running past people in college. Well, those aren't the guys that last in the NFL, that are running linebackers over, that are thinking that they can run linebackers over, that can run safeties over, that can run past people. The guys that can run past people, there are very few of them in the NFL. Do you know how many of them were running past people in college? All of them. The 3rd string running back, Sonoris Perry, 2 times we're going to say on this podcast, Sonoris Perry was running past the collegiate defenders trying to tackle him. Okay. That's what happens in college. Okay. It's not those players that last in this league and that are the good ones in this league.
That's fair. Matt Waldman actually said something in a running back episode similar to that. He said 40 times for running backs don't really matter.
They don't.
Because all that means is that after 40 yards you're going to get tackled by somebody.
It's the instincts that you have Is he going to run away from players in the NFL? Yes, because I'll tell you what, 4'7", 4'8" guys run away when they're in the open field away from defenders. That's just the way. That's the way it happens.
Especially if you take good angles.
My question is, does he have the instincts to be a short yardage area runner when he gets the ball and he gets past the line of scrimmage? Does he have the instincts to know when to cut and to know when to get upfield? Because if he does, a lot of the things against Miles Sanders and some of the other top running backs were they didn't have that instinct level. That is not the questions here for Devin Singletary. The questions have become, if he ran a 4.5, how much higher does he get drafted? Probably a lot higher.
Okay.
And that's 1/6 of a second.
Okay, so we've just addressed his talent. Let's talk about what the fuck this does to our depth chart. How
Doesn't
about
matter.
this?
Doesn't matter.
No.
Doesn't matter.
Help walk me through this, professional radio guy.
It doesn't matter.
Okay?
Murphy
right
gets
now,
cut.
we have 8 running backs on the roster. If we're to keep McCoy, Gore, Yeldon, and Singletary,
Which is what's going to happen.
okay, that means we're heading into 2019 with 4 guys who do not play special teams at the running
That's
back
right.
position.
That's right.
We cut Jonathan Williams because he wouldn't play
That's
special
okay.
teams.
Listen. Do you want to know why it's okay? Here's why. Well, first of all, they didn't cut Jonathan Williams because he didn't play special teams. They cut him because they didn't draft him. So the reason it's okay that you're going to have 4 guys playing that don't play special teams at the running back position is because you have linebackers that you're probably going to carry 5 or 6 that all but 2 don't play special teams, one of which is your best special teams player, Lorenzo Alexander, that is a full-time, 100% special teams player. Not only that, you're going to probably carry 5 or 6 corners. Your bottom 2 or 3 corners are all going to play special teams. You're going to carry 4 safeties. Your backup safeties are both going to play special teams. How many special teams positions do we have? We don't have that many special teams positions. I wouldn't worry about one roster spot. For Christ's sake, Doug Marrone carried a fucking kickoff specialist. Okay? So who cares if one guy does not play special teams?
All right. You know what? Trump card. You just pulled out the kick.
That's right.
The kickoff specialist. Holy shit.
Jordan Gay.
I forgot about the kickoff specialist. You know
Jordan
what?
fucking Gay.
I'm done fighting. You know what? Cheers, sir. Yeah. Because I'm done fighting the roster spot. Holy shit. Jesus, folks. All right, so we are moving here. We are moving along. And so when I walked away from this thing throughout the first 2 rounds, obviously I had mixed emotions. I feel like we killed it with the first 2 draft picks. The third one obviously disappointed me. And then there's this Dawson Knox pick, which I'm not even going to tell you, I did no fucking research on before we recorded this podcast. And here's the reason why. Here's why. He's a guy who caught the ball 15
Doesn't matter.
15 times last year. He touched the ball 15 times.
What was DK Metcalf's stats?
Don't talk to me about DK Metcalf. That man is dead to me now. The draft is
I
over.
know how many stats,
I never have
what
to
his
hear his
stats
name
look like.
again. His blocking wasn't great, and he played on an Ole Miss team who I got to see for up close and personal when they played Alabama. They had a quarterback that didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. Their offensive coordinator was an idiot. That whole team was in shambles. How are you supposed to objectively grade anybody, scout a player on that offense, outside of an A.J. Brown who was the only consistent thing on that team?
You take their tools.
And you come away with the guy who touched the ball the least.
You take their
and
tools.
And you traded up to get him.
Yeah, well, you had to because of all that. Because the tight ends that came off the board, they knew they needed to come out of that draft with a guy that could start or a guy that could get close to starting. Here's the thing about Dawson Knox. Ran a 4.5. A 4.5 at his pro day. Wasn't invited to combat. He ran a 4.5. He was also ranked number 3 out of the tight ends in Pro Football Focus's blocking grades, by the way.
I want to know about his offensive upside. Start talking because there might be a Seagram's bet.
6'4", 250 pounds, ran a 4.5 40 at the combine. Yes, 15 catches last year. Not a lot of catches for a tight end that started in the league. He was a 0-star recruit. He was a walk-on. He ended up gaining a position and beating out 3 4-star recruits at the tight end position at Ole Miss. So this is a guy that first and foremost was a quarterback his senior year of high school. I think he tore his ACL or broke his foot and ended up not getting really recruited to go anywhere. Ends up going to Ole Miss, and he basically goes on as a quarterback and says, I can also play wide receiver. And they said, well, we need some depth of tight end. Why don't you play tight end? So played a position that he's never played before at 6'4" and 220 pounds. He gains 30 pounds in 3 years and still runs a 4.5 40. Also had some injury problems his sophomore and junior year that he didn't get to play a lot. And then he plays last year. This is a guy, right, at 6'4", 250, at a 4.51. I just want to keep emphasizing those numbers because that's pretty incredible. Not to mention, I had him as my tight end 5. I really liked him as a target for the Bills in the 3rd round. That was my only thing with Devin Singletary, is they didn't come in with Dawson Knox in the 3rd round, so I was pissed. But then they ended up trading back in and getting Dawson Knox, so I think Devin Singletary pick now is fine because they still got Dawson Knox out of it. To me, Dawson Knox by year 2 will be your full-time starter and will be a top 15 tight end in the league. I'm that confident about him. Connor Rogers of Bleacher Report basically deemed the Bills draft an entire win because they went after a guy like Dawson Knox. Chris Sims, similar praise of the Dawson Knox pick. Knox is the kind of player that the Bills desperately need, a player that has a little bit of rawness. He hasn't had time to really develop bad habits at the tight end position. He's only going to get better as a blocker. You literally went out and got Jake Fisher, who's never played a snap at the tight end position in the NFL and has only been a tackle, is now your potential 3rd or 4th tight end. Tyler Kroft, known to be a good blocker. If he doesn't have to be in blocking situations year 1, they can do that by the depth that they've created at the position. For me, Dawson Knox will be a huge integral part of this offense by year 2.
So you're
Seagram's bet.
Okay. Chris, you go.
Dawson Knox. Seagram's. I will drink a Seagram's anytime that you put him as the 0 of the game, hero of the game. You have to drink a Seagram's.
I'll take that. every.
Okay, that's a good one.
You're going to forget this by the time the season begins. So
and you will not.
I will remember this. So
you're telling me that a tall, fast, athletic tight end who used to be a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm reminded of another tall,
Logan
fast,
Thomas,
athletic quarterback. They used to play tight end.
Tim Tebow.
Named Logan Thomas, who I think he went on to have like a Pro Bowl career. He, I think he single-handedly took a team to the Super Bowl. And that didn't happen. No, he got cut from the Buffalo Bills. He got cut from this team. And you went out and drafted another super athletic tight end who used to be a quarterback who never touched the football. Great.
Logan Thomas ran a 4.71 at the combine. Ooh. And was also 2 inches taller. 6'4", 250, 4'5", 140 at his pro day. This is a player that, and listen, I was talking about this.
Am I supposed to trust the process here? Is that what this is? Does
yes.
This say trust the process?
But also, let me just tell you, you mentioned a couple things that I agree with. Ole Miss's offense, what I do as a quote-unquote, big quotes, a job. It's not really a job. Okay, I talk about the Bills, I watch some draft stuff, and I get made fun of by my girlfriend. That's not a job. That is a hobby. But I get paid minimum wage to do it. That's right, minimum wage. And what I will say is the thing that I like about what the Bills did in this draft is they got guys that, and how difficult it is to look at Dawson Knox's film and say, this is my tight end 5. Well, the reason you do that is you look at Ole Miss this is what I was starting this conversation about, talking about how I don't really consider this a job. When I had to watch Ole Miss film, that was a fucking job. That was a 9 to 5. Since Lunch Pail was all over Twitter yesterday, that's a lunch pail type of job watching Ole Miss's offense. They had 3 draft-eligible wide receivers, a quarterback that couldn't throw to him, and they had a tight end who I thought could have potentially been a second-round pick had he been utilized the right way and should have gone in front of Irv Smith. Everything about Dawson Knox, other than the production, is better than Irv Smith.
But so you're telling me he's worth not just a 3rd-round pick, but 2 4th-round picks?
That's fine. That's fine.
We're going to revisit this conversation later on in the season. To keep this moving, pick 181. Okay, we go back to the 6th round now because was this 5th? 6th? Who gives a fuck at this point? Pick 181, safety Jaquan Johnson.
Yep.
5'10", 190 pounds.
Small box player.
This is it.
That's what she said.
4.66 40 time. The same as the running back we drafted. Fantastic. Wonderful.
He's not a deep threat. 290 tackle seasons, by the way.
But I will say he's twice been named second team All ACC.
And 290 tackle seasons.
And just 1 sack and 4.5 tackles for a loss during that span. Now here's what it is. This is what people say about him, and I think it epitomizes it. Right here, John Lendyard. A pint-sized safety who plays like a linebacker. Johnson is truly fearless in his playing style.
Yep.
Johnson does well enough at the little things to likely carve out a decent career as an assignment-sound backup DB and special team star at the next level.
That's who they need.
And then Lance Zierlein from NFL Network.
Big fan.
Teams might pick at his measurables, but he's reliable in coverage and extremely consistent as a downhill open field tackler with a taste for striking. Lacks ball hawking instincts, which limits his production.
Right, and he's not going to be a free safety. He's a strong safety. He's a nickel player, the kind of guy that comes in the box, potentially guards your tight end or your running back that's coming out of the backfield that's lining up as a wide receiver.
So it's like Bakari Rambo.
A lot of yeah. But Bakari Rambo had a crazy. He turned into a ball hawk. I don't know.
This is what I like about this pick. When I saw it come in, I mean, I don't hate it. I mean, the only players I knew when you look at the way the draft was falling at this point, when you look at who got drafted when he was still on the board, the only players still there that I knew or cared about were Travion Williams at running back, which we're not taking another one of those, and off OU's Rodney Anderson, who Matt Waldman sold me on the upside of him once he's healthy, but it's irrelevant because we already invested draft capital there, and the wide receivers weren't worth talking about at that point. So fuck it, a safety pick. We know that Sean McDermott likes to deploy a third safety.
Which is why they should go get Eric Berry, but that's another conversation.
We're not a Super Bowl contender, and he would want so much money to come here.
No, he wouldn't.
What you're essentially dealing with here, the low tackle for loss and sack numbers, the reason I mention those is because when you look at him, he's a solid athlete, but he's the type of guy that, to me, if you're talking schematically, you're going to have to play him far away from the line of scrimmage. You do not want him down there in the muddy waters getting caught up in the churn when the ball gets snapped. He's a safety you're probably going to spend most of your time deploying in that robber role in a cover 3 somewhere in between.
They drafted him to take over for Sierra Neal. That's what they drafted Sierra Neal to be, and he's not that.
And that's what I was going to say is this pick is almost the same pick they made when they took Sierra Neal.
If you go back to last year, think about all the small school guys they took. They took 3 small school guys. This year, not a one. All of them are from the SEC, the Big 12, Big 10.
Yeah.
And the American, the AAC. But.
Well, and the thing I look at is when people say he doesn't have ball skills, and everyone, there's some casual fans out there who will say, well, he's a safety. Eventually they can maybe turn
Chris
around.
has tremendous ball skills. That doesn't make him an NFL player.
This kid just has 4 turnovers in his senior year, but he plays in an ACC with no top-flight quarterback talent. No, fuck you people out there at home saying, well, Daniel Jones got drafted 6th overall, so isn't he elite? Ryan Finley. That's a quarterback in your conference, and you only had 4 turnovers.
They also had, what's the Miami quarterback's name? Rozier?
Yeah, Rozier.
He stinks.
I mean, you're playing in a conference that outside of the Clemson kid there.
They had that Indian lefty kid from North Carolina, too.
He
got suspended, though, for tattoos or something.
You're not dealing with a whole lot of talent, and you only force 4 turnovers. You're not going to be that guy at the NFL level. That's just not going to happen. So, essentially, he's just the dude who's going to come in here and be our big nickel, corner, cover 3 guy. Sierra Neal, when you look at the impact in the depth chart with this pick, our starter's in place. We've already got him. You've got Raphael Bush. I don't think there's any way.
Rafi Bush.
I don't think he comes off the board.
Rachel Bush.
Unless this kid balls out. That guy is our 3rd DB. Our starters are in place. The only way that I see Sierra Neal keeping his job because of this draft pick is if he somehow has the best camp anybody's ever seen out of a safety.
He has a Marcus Murphy type camp.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he has to look ascendant in order to keep his job because I just don't see us keeping 5 safeties. I don't think that's a thing you can do.
Unless one's a Pro Bowl special teamer. That's why they're going to keep 6 receivers. They're going to have a Pro Bowl returner in Andre Roberts.
And see, that's just it. You've got too many numbers, and special teams has to be a consideration.
I actually did the 53-man roster on the radio because we were really fucking bored, and there was a lot of time to fill. So I went through the 53-man roster like after the 5th round, and I was like, I was having trouble filling the roster spot. So
for the first time in forever, we have starters with value, and we're bringing in talented rookies.
This is going to be the first year where we have a podcast after like the first. Well, they don't have first and second cuts anymore, but after the preseason, where the Bills cut like 4 or 5 players that are priority free agents to go to their teams.
Oh, absolutely. I would absolutely believe that. So then we look at the last rounds of the draft. The last picks we made.
They got a white tight end.
Defensive end Daryl Johnson at pick number 225. And at pick 228, Tommy Stevens.
What about Voshan?
Tommy Sweeney's.
You missed
Oh,
out
yeah,
on
no,
Voshan.
we took Voshan. How did I gloss over that?
I want to say
Jesus
Voshan was
Christ.
their fifth,
He
and
was
you
their
were
fifth
he was
round
their
pick.
fifth, and the safety.
I think at that point I was just so fed up because of the knocks and the
I like
Singletary
Voshan.
picks. I scaled right over it.
Yeah.
When you talk about what this linebacker could be, okay, he was a guy that I was kind of tabbed when it came to the draft show with, hey, get to know some prospects so we can all talk about it. You know, Ryan Lasel over there from the Huddle does a really good job of kind of breaking this up so that we can have a cohesive show and we can entertain people at home and we can talk about the players and the people involved and the things that you want to know so that it's an entertaining viewing experience. So as he's throwing it around, it comes to me with this Voshan Williams thing, and I'm just thinking in my head as I'm hearing that he's our pick. He's got the speed to be a cover guy, just has no instincts. There's multiple instances on tape of this linebacker. He's fast. He's smaller. He's kind of in that Matt Milano mold. The 6'1", 230. He's got the speed and athletic chops to be everything you want in a weak side linebacker in a 4-3 defense. But at the same time, he needs everyone around him to tell him where the fuck he needs to be.
Yeah.
There's multiple instances.
He's like a
during
Brandon
games.
Spikes.
That's what I'm saying. A guy who, except much smaller. Much
And
smaller.
dumber.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't seem
Dumber
to
than Brandon
understand a lot. And that's saying a lot that he's less intelligent in terms of football than Brandon Spikes. You're talking about a guy who routinely has to be marched around the field, moved by his teammates. People have to signal him that he's in the wrong place, which explains why he's so bad in coverage.
It's always the craziest athletic kids that don't know a damn fucking
He doesn't
thing.
understand it. So I get it.
So
I guess
frustrating.
it's a Hail Mary as a project because you say, hey, we saw
We've
what
got
happened.
Leslie Frazier.
Well, here's the thing. We saw what happened last year. I understand the pick. We understand what happened last year when we lost Matt Milano. Matt Milano disappeared. Lorenzo Alexander got pressed into duty. I think the day that it really became apparent that wasn't going to cut it anymore was the day that we played the New England Patriots. And they ran jet sweep after jet sweep after jet sweep directly at Lorenzo Alexander, who was trying to play weak side linebacker and just failing miserably to get to the edge of the defense with any sort of ability to bottle up the runner. Even if you can't make the tackle, at least your presence will force the play back inside. But instead, we were relying on a slow linebacker to do that job. Now, you've got this athletic kid who can fly around
If
out
he can
there,
play strong side.
and that's it. Well, not only that, but if something were to happen to Milano, he makes a quality backup.
At a weak side, 100%.
And as a special teamer, those are the special teams. It doesn't take a lot of nuance.
They drafted rounds 5 and on for special teams.
That's what I'm saying. Like, these are guys who
And
are
a white
all
tight
gonna
end
be-
just cuz.
And a white tight end just guys. But ultimately, Voshan, he's a guy who I think he'll make the 53 just based on his special teams upside. And the fact that we don't have any other athletes at linebacker.
And because
outside.
Danny Crossman's gone.
Probably.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Drew actually moved him Drew got the U-Haul.
He did.
Yeah, moved him up on out of Buffalo.
That
He
guy.
pooped in a bag and lit it on fire. And put
Yeah.
it on his doorstep.
Yep.
He did. No, he really did that. Yeah.
Hey,
It was
listen.
disgusting. It was
Listen.
it was a nasty poo.
If the authorities are listening, you can't prove a damn thing. All right? I'm innocent until proven guilty. Come at me. So with that said, our last picks of the draft. 225, 228. You've got Daryl Johnson, Tommy Sweeney. They are what you want out of your last picks.
Do you like them better than 2018's 7th round picks?
I'd argue yes.
Okay, and by 7th round picks, I know that they took Ray McLeod in the 6th round, but he's basically a 7th round pick, and also Austin Prohl.
We took two midget wide receivers.
And listen, they took Austin Prohl because he was, he was a former
'Cause
Carolina
It's a
Panther.
little quid pro quo.
His dad was a
We're
former
gonna,
Carolina Panther.
Yeah, we're going to do you a good one. I mean, here's my assessment of these last two picks. First of all, Johnson. Probably one of my favorite picks in this entire draft. Here's why. He's 6'6", 253 pounds, with a 103-inch wingspan. Okay?
Is that
Did
big?
we draft a tight end or a fucking pterodactyl? Is this guy flying around New Era Field on game day? His wingspan is 8.5 feet. The tallest active NBA player is 7'3". This guy fits that mold that we've discussed week over week here on this podcast. This front office, there's a couple things that they like. They like experience, and they like freak physical traits that you can't teach. I'm sorry, but pterodactyl wings happen to fall into that category.
We should probably actually call him Magilla Gorilla. Should be his nickname.
That's my nickname. I have family members who call me Magilla. That's my nickname.
Because you have long arms.
Yes, for a guy who's 5'10", I can almost touch my toes from a sitting position.
We should have Reed introduce you to Gerald Johnson by the end of OTAs to see who has a bigger wingspan.
He should, because honestly, if he needs any help finding a place to get shirts that fit his ridiculous arms, I know the guys. I've got them. I've got them on speed dial. Honestly, though, if you're looking for I don't want to call it a throwaway pick, but a pick at the end of a draft, you
Take
go
a
with
kicker.
You go with a super productive kid from a lower level college who has these freak traits and a frame that you can throw some more weight on, and throw him on the practice squad for a year and see if he develops into anything. I mean, is that fair? Is that a fair
That's kind of what
assessment?
they did with Taron Johnson.
Well, exactly. And then Taron Johnson made the fucking roster, and it turns out he was pretty good.
That's what they did with Tank Johnson, too.
So my point is, I don't hate this pick because you're literally swinging for the fences, and if you're wrong, it costs you nothing. It's so late in the draft. There's nothing. There was no.
One could say that about a third-round pick.
No, I hate you. You're going to keep trying to convince me that this is a good idea. I'm not there. I haven't had enough Moosehead yet. And then,
yes, you have.
I mean, think about it. Physical freak. Eddie. If I'm Eddie Yarbrough and Mike Love, you've been put on notice.
What about Eli Harold?
Well, Eli Harold's going to make the roster as a Sam linebacker. That's going to be his role, as backup Sam.
Supposedly he's listed as a DN.
He is, but I would bet you that he will play that role before the season.
Would you like to put a Sigrams on it?
God, there's so many wine coolers flying right
there. There it is. Another Eli Harold lines up as a.
This is impossible to keep track of.
But
Folks,
when he makes whether or not
it?
He makes the roster or not, he plays what he gets qualified to play as is a Sam linebacker, a strong side linebacker.
All right, I'll write that on the board.
He plays more snaps by the end of the season as Sam linebacker than he does as DN.
And that can include, if he gets cut, that he plays more preseason snaps at either position.
Fine.
Whatever he plays the most preseason snaps or snaps for the longevity of his Buffalo career.
With all these Seagrams, I will see you in hell or the dentist. I don't know which is going to happen first, but either way. Then, again, Sweeney, to your point, we spent our last pick, and as every team's final pick should be.
Yeah.
Final pick of the draft should just be
a white tight end every single time.
You should be like Kobe, shooting from 55 feet away. Just going, Kobe, just huck it up, see if you make it. We took a tight end named Sweeney. He looks and smells like a late 7th round pick should.
Like he's from South Buffalo.
Reliable hands in the passing game, unpolished blocking, athletically limited enough that nobody is scared of this guy. He's not going to scare a linebacker that, this guy's going to run past me. I'm assuming that he makes the practice squad and helps with our depth in training camp. And that at some point, maybe, moves in with Reed and helps him split the rent.
Well, Reed has a 1-bedroom.
Oh, well then
but
that's
who
not
has
bad.
a 2-bedroom? This
Chris!
guy.
Guy with an NFL budget.
Oh, Jesus.
Getting outclassed by Chris. How does he feel? We should get him on a podcast, see how he feels.
You know what's hilarious? If you're on the practice squad, Chris actually makes more money than you.
Is that true?
Yes.
How much do you make on the practice squad?
About $35,000.
That's it?
About 35, 30.
Everyone makes more.
Like 38.
People at Mighty Top, people at Seneca Teahots over here make more.
I literally think the only reason Sweeney and Knox are here is just in case Croft. Yeah, that's right, fucking Croft. I'm looking at you, and I'm gonna have my eye on you all fucking off season, just in case Croft proves that he really is made of glass and just can't stay healthy. So
Sweeney's not making the team. Don't worry.
No, go. Thank God. It looked like I was going to lose sleep over that.
Listen, at the end of the day, they had a good draft. They've got a lot of depth. There's a lot of competition in almost every position, except the quarterback position. And It's all about Josh Allen. It doesn't matter what any of their draft picks do. All it is.
I don't know. There's a certain guy out there whose name I won't mention. I'm sorry, Kevin, sir. Who somehow believes that undrafted free agent quarterback Tyree Jackson.
What was the name?
Kevin, I'm sorry.
Oh, he believes that?
Somehow believes that Tyree Jackson is
QB2.
He's QB of the backup QB of the future. Undrafted free agents. We brought in a boatload. None of these guys will matter. Devin Sills might be the only guy worth mentioning here.
David Sills.
Devin Sills.
Fifth.
He's a white dude. His name could be Devin. Don't
He's a
argue
former
with me.
quarterback.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin, your boy.
Nick Easley, I like too. Another wide receiver.
Is it fair to say that Sills might be the only undrafted free agent that matters out of this class?
He's going to be like Brandon Riley, the preseason darling. Am I right or wrong?
Nate's eyes are scanning. He's thinking. He's deep in thought. He's contemplating. Look at him. God.
I don't think that Tyree Jackson likely ends up on their practice squad.
Yes.
And then in year 2 ends up their backup quarterback.
I don't think he ever sees the uniform.
He's going to play. And here's what I actually agree with. Sorry. What I actually believe.
Some guy.
What I believe I agree with Kevin is that for the first time in a very long time, when you're in the fourth quarter of the fourth preseason game, that you're going to have a guy that you have a vested interest in watching. For the first time in that is true.
All right.
Think about this. Think about the football that you have to watch on preseason in the second half. It's terrible. And you know what you're going to get to do?
Sims throwing the ball
Leinart.
This is one of those moments where I think I have a great premise, and then Nate comes in and just hits me with awful truths I've somehow drank out of my memory.
We will have an opportunity to watch cool football past the second half of preseason games this year. So, you know what? That's fine with me. Is Tyree Jackson, he was rated as my 5th quarterback. He needed to go to a situation where no matter where he went, he wasn't going to start in the first 2 years. Well, he's there in Buffalo. If he would have gone to
why didn't he stay in school?
Because he didn't want to stay here.
Because he didn't want to stay in Buffalo.
Wouldn't you improve your draft status if you stayed?
No,
not at Buffalo.
I have a feeling that team's going to be real bad next year.
Here's the thing. Maybe
UB fans, I'm sorry.
Maybe he had an opportunity to go to Penn State. Maybe. But I don't know that he did.
So around the table, here we are at the end of things. I feel like I've reached a point of catharsis. I've got some of this stuff off my chest. I've gotten to rant about the parts of this draft that bothered me the most. Things that really just chapped my ass. Chris, you've been quiet over there for a little while. Why don't you just give us your synopsis of what you thought about the draft as a whole and whether you think it was a win or not for the Buffalo Bills?
I mean, I thought it was a win. I mean, from what Russ Brown told us, he had Ford 15th overall on his big board. We pick up a defensive tackle, offensive tackle. They're expected to start right from the day one starters off the bus. Right?
Okay, Doug Whaley.
Day one starters off the bus.
Are these Doug Whaley starters off the bus, or are these legitimate starters off the bus, Nate?
I think they're legitimate starters off the bus.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I like.
I think Dawson Knox is going to start at tight end.
Oh, you get out of here with that heresy.
No, Kroom's got the inside on that, literally.
Jesus.
So your take on the draft?
I like the draft as a whole. I mean, we got first 2 rounds. We went in the trenches. So that you got to build from the inside out. Everyone knows that.
Yeah,
I'm so glad we didn't take a DK Metcalf at 9 or T.J. Hawkinson or Noah Fant or A.J. Brown or Hollywood Brown or other Browns. We did not take any receivers or flashy picks. It was like Dallas in the Manziel draft, where everyone was like, oh, maybe Dallas is going to take Manziel, the hot, flashy pick, but they went offensive linemen, solidified their line, and they've had one of the best offensive lines over the last couple of years. I think that's what we did.
Holy fuck, that's a salient point. Chris?
Sorry.
Congratulations, sir.
I know.
Cheers. I'll cheers to
Seriously,
that.
you sound like a Democrat right there.
Yeah, thank you.
So now, you, Mr. Geary, Your takeaway is on the draft as a whole. When you take a step back and look at it from 100 feet away. Good, bad, indifferent. How do you feel about it?
10-6.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
If you go out there and look at the board.
Hot! Holy shit, it got hot in here.
If you go out there and look at the Seagram's board, because I said it in January, the week after our season ended, I said, we're making the playoffs next year. We're making the playoffs. You took the bet.
Of course I took the bet, because that's lunacy.
No, we're making the playoffs.
That's what I feel about the draft, 10-6.
That's called hedging your bets.
That's all I got. 10-6 is what I got for the draft.
Folks, I look at this and I say, like I said, I've reached a point of catharsis. You know, I had some angst, I had some animosity, I had some questions. We came here and we drank about it, and we talked it through, and as I'm speaking about it and hearing it out loud, there's no way you can come away from this draft and think that the team isn't better now, immeasurably better now, than we were 3 weeks ago. And isn't that the point of this? Isn't that what you go into the draft to try to achieve? You want upside. You want long shots at certain positions. Why? Because if not, it didn't matter anyway. You took a shot and you missed. At least you took your shot. But you did it pragmatically and still managed to land some players whose upside is so large that even if a handful of them pan out. You know, I've gotten used to being the guy who is so down about our drafts. And then the things I hate are the things that work out well. So, What the fuck do I know? What I know is that I'm excited at what we did at the top of the draft. What we did in the middle of the draft will figure itself out. I mean, Dawson Knox. I mean, we've got. We're all going to go home with diabetes, folks. Everyone here at this table is going to need fillings by the time this season is over. But the fact remains, there is no way you can categorize what we did this weekend as a failure. And even someone who's pessimistic, I have to admit that. So, with that said, I appreciate you all showing up for tonight's podcast. Nate, I'm sure you've got some post-draft stuff coming up. You have the wicked case of hiccups right now.
I got hiccups because I had like 4 of these moose heads. But no, I don't have anything post-draft because I deserve a break.
Yes, you do.
So you'll be on the air Saturday.
I will be on the air Saturday.
All right, cool.
So where can people follow you on Twitter, and where can they find you on the radio?
At Nate Geary, WGR, at Nate_Geary on Instagram if you want to see what my girlfriend looks like. And then...
What an asshole! I love this guy.
Other than that, that's it. I got some Cover 1 stuff coming out. I'm going to do a series. Oh, God, I really do still have the hiccups. I'm going to come out with a series that's going to be really overwhelming. And it's going to give me diabetes. But I'm going to come out with a film series on cover1.net of
you get massive
every
hiccups.
Josh Allen game. And I'm going to do a recap of every game that Josh Allen was in last year.
All right. Well, there you go, folks.
I'm done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you are. You are finished, sir. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in throughout the entire draft series. It's been the most successful draft series we've had since the podcast started. I don't know if you guys have known that with your support, we haven't had a podcast finish under 700 downloads in 8 weeks.
Pretty good.
That's a fucking run for us right there. Guys, it's all because of you. Thank you so much for showing up week in, week out, and supporting us.
Because of you.
Hiccups are gone.
He's going to croon.
That was in sync. No, that was 98 Degrees. I'm sorry.
Folks,
I'm sorry for mixing up the boy bands.
Thank you so much for your continued support. We're going to break off into the off season. This is going to be a great one to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch unfold. But we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's Nate Geary. And this has been the Rockpile Report.